Sometimes God's greatest blessings come wrapped in the packaging of unanswered prayers. These words echo through time, speaking directly to your heart today. My dear friends, have you ever felt the weight of heaven's silence? Have you knelt until your knees ached, prayed until your voice grew hoarse, and still found yourself wondering why the heavens seemed sealed shut? You are not alone in this sacred struggle. Today, I bring you a reflection that can transform not just how you pray, but how you live and breathe in the universe that sometimes seems to ignore your deepest pleas. This is not just another message. It's a journey into the mysterious ways God works when He appears to be doing nothing at all. Let me share with you 10 profound truths about why God didn't fix your situation, and what our beloved Pope Francis would say about these moments of apparent divine absence. These insights have changed countless lives throughout history, and, today, they may just change yours. 1. The silence of God hurts, but it's not abandonment. When you needed Him most, the universe seemed to fall silent. The prayers that left your lips appeared to vanish into thin air. My friends, this silence can cut deeper than any wound. It can make you question everything you've ever believed. But what if I told you that God's silence is not His absence? Pope Francis teaches us that God's silence is where He works most deeply. In those moments when you feel most alone, the divine is actually closest to you, not with thunder and lightning, but with the gentle presence that transforms from within. Think of it like a master sculptor. When creating a masterpiece, the artist doesn't explain every chisel stroke. There is concentration, focus, and a sacred silence as the true form emerges from the stone. You are that masterpiece in progress. Many misinterpret this silence as rejection or indifference. Nothing could be further from the truth. The universe hasn't abandoned you. It has enveloped you in a cocoon of transformation. What appears as absence is actually intimate presence working at levels too deep for words. Let me share what happened to Maria, a woman I met years ago. In the 1960s, she lost her youngest son to illness, despite praying day and night for his healing. For 20 years, she told me, I thought God had abandoned me. But one day, I realized that during those decades of what I called God's silence, I had developed a compassion and depth that became my greatest gift to others. His silence wasn't abandonment, it was preparation. When you feel God's silence, don't run from it, lean into it. This is not the universe ignoring you. This is love working in ways that transcend your current understanding. You are not forgotten. You are being formed. 2. Not every prayer was meant to be answered the way you imagined. My dear friends, think back to the prayers you've offered with such certainty, the specific solutions you prescribed to the divine. You asked for healing of the body, but perhaps what you needed was healing of the spirit. You begged for reconciliation with someone who left, but maybe you needed freedom from that relationship, more than its restoration. Pope Francis reminds us with such tenderness, God is not a magician with a magic wand. He is Father. And like any loving parent, He gives what we need, not always what we think we want. In Jeremiah 29:11, the scripture tells us, For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Notice that God doesn't promise to follow our plans. He promises that His plans for us are good, even when they differ from our own. The universe operates with a wisdom that sees around corners you cannot yet glimpse. When your specific prayer seems ignored, pause and consider. Are you seeing the full picture? Or is your perspective limited by time, by fear, by what you believe is possible? Many become bitter when prayers aren't answered exactly as requested. They feel betrayed, as though God failed a test they designed. But my friends, God doesn't take our tests. He invites us into His higher wisdom, His longer view of our lives. What if that relationship you begged to save would have ultimately destroyed you? What if that job you didn't get would have taken you down a path away from your true purpose? What if that illness, while painful, prevented something far worse? or led you to a discovery that will change countless lives. The universe isn't deaf to your prayers. It's operating at a level of love so advanced that sometimes only time can reveal its perfect wisdom. You aren't receiving silence. You're receiving something better than what you asked for. 3. You were waiting for a miracle, but God was waiting for you. We come in agreement today about a profound truth. Sometimes when we think God is delaying, He is actually waiting for something crucial to shift within us. The miracle wasn't delayed because the universe forgot you. The answer wasn't withheld because you weren't worthy enough. My friends, perhaps the timing had everything to do with preparation. God's delays are not God's denials, Pope Francis has reminded the faithful. Sometimes God waits because what needs to change is not the situation, but our readiness to receive. Think of how a farmer must prepare soil before planting seeds. If the ground isn't ready, even the best seeds won't flourish. In the same way, the universe sometimes waits for your heart to become receptive soil, not to punish you, but to ensure that when the answer comes, it can truly take root and transform your life. How often we rush God, demanding immediate solutions. Yet the scriptures tell us in Ecclesiastes 3:1, there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. The universe operates by divine timing, not by our impatient demands. You may have been asking, where is my miracle? Where is my breakthrough? But perhaps the real question is, am I truly ready for what I'm asking for? Would you have appreciated the answer the same way a year ago as you do now? Would you have had the maturity to steward the blessing? Would you have recognized the gift for what it was? The waiting wasn't punishment, it was preparation. God wasn't ignoring you, He was investing in you. The universe wasn't withholding, it was working within, creating in you the capacity to not just receive the answer, but to become the answer someone else has been praying for. 4. God didn't stop the pain, but He sat in it with you. Brothers and sisters, may the peace of God be with you. If you're enjoying this video, type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0. Your opinion is sacred to me as it helps me continue this mission of spreading light, faith, and hope. My dear friends, perhaps one of the hardest truths to accept is that God doesn't always remove our suffering. Sometimes He chooses to accompany us through it instead. When the pain continued, when the thorns weren't removed, you may have wondered, why won't God just fix this? The answer may be more profound than you imagined. Pope Francis speaks of a God who suffers with us, who listens without demanding explanation. This is not a distant deity watching your pain from afar. This is Emmanuel, God with us, who enters into your darkest valleys and sits beside you in the ashes. The universe doesn't always take away the cross. Sometimes it gives you the strength to carry it. And in carrying it, you discover depths of courage and resilience you never knew you possessed. In 2 Corinthians 12:9, Paul shares God's response to his own desperate prayers for relief. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Some thorns remain not because God is cruel, but because in our vulnerability, we experience a different kind of miracle. The miracle of divine presence that transforms suffering into something sacred. Many misunderstand this aspect of faith, believing that following God means exemption from pain. But authentic spirituality has never promised a pain-free existence. It promises that you will never face your pain alone. The universe doesn't abandon you in your suffering. It enters into it with you. Have you noticed how your greatest growth often came through your deepest pain? How your most profound connections with others were formed not in your moments of triumph, but in your seasons of struggle? This is no coincidence. This is divine alchemy, turning lead into gold, transforming suffering into wisdom. God may not have fixed the situation, but He never left you in it. And sometimes, beloved, His presence in our pain is the greater miracle than its removal could ever be. 5. What didn't get fixed? formed you. My friends, consider for a moment. Who would you be today if every prayer had been answered exactly as you asked? If every problem had been immediately solved? If every pain had been instantly removed? The reality may surprise you. You might be less than who you are now. Pope Francis reminds us that sometimes God doesn't change the situation because He's shaping the person. Those unanswered prayers and unfixed problems weren't failures of divine power. They were instruments of divine purpose. The universe operates not just for your comfort, but for your character. Not just for your convenience, but for your completion. Every tear, every frustration, every moment of waiting has been carving depth and dimension into your soul that could have come no other way. Isaiah 48:10 tells us, "See, I have refined you, though not as silver. I have tested you in the furnace of affliction." This refining process isn't punishment. It's purification. It's not about making you suffer. It's about making you stronger, wiser, more compassionate. Many fail to recognize how profoundly they've been formed by what wasn't fixed. The relationship that wasn't restored taught you independence. The illness that wasn't cured developed your empathy. The financial struggle that continued built your resilience. These weren't God's oversights, they were His intentions. You are not the same person you were before these challenges. You have depths now that weren't there before. You have wisdom that couldn't have come from comfort alone. You have strength that easy answers would never have developed in you. What if the fix you were praying for would have actually fixed you in place, preventing the growth that struggle has produced? What if divine love knew that certain muscles in your soul could only be developed through resistance? The universe hasn't been working against you. It's been working within you, creating something beautiful that only pressure and time could produce. 6. Some healings are invisible, but eternal. Dear friends, we often pray for the miracles we can see, the physical healing, the financial breakthrough, the visible reconciliation. These are worthy prayers, but what if, while you were focusing on these visible miracles, the universe was performing deeper, invisible healings within you? Pope Francis calls us to recognize the miracles that don't shine to the eyes, but save from within. While you were watching for external signs, God was doing internal surgery, removing bitterness you didn't know was poisoning you, healing wounds from childhood you'd forgotten were there, restoring parts of your soul that had been broken for decades. In Psalm 51:6, David prays, "Yet you desired faithfulness even in the womb. You taught me wisdom in that secret place." There is a secret place within each of us where the most profound healing occurs, healing that may never make headlines or be visible to others, but that changes everything about how we live. Many become discouraged because they can't point to dramatic external changes. But my friends, the most significant transformations often happen in the invisible realms first. The shift in how you see yourself, the release of a grudge you've held for years, the quiet dawn of peace in a heart that's known only turmoil. These invisible healings aren't less real because they can't be photographed or measured. In fact, they are often more profound and lasting than their visible counterparts. A body may be healed for decades, but a soul can be healed for eternity. What if, while you were looking for God to change your circumstances, He was busy changing your heart? What if, while you were focused on your physical condition, the universe was addressing your spiritual condition? What if the healing you couldn't see is actually more miraculous than the one you were asking for? The universe works from the inside out, not the outside in. And sometimes, the most profound miracles are the ones that transform not how you live, but why you live. 7. Maybe God didn't fix it because He was teaching you to let go. My dear friends, there is profound wisdom in the universe's timing and methods. Sometimes, what we interpret as God's failure to act is actually His invitation to release. What if the miracle you needed wasn't the restoration of what was lost, but the freedom that comes from letting it go? Pope Francis speaks of a God who doesn't imprison, he liberates. In your desperate prayers for God to fix a situation, perhaps the divine was gently trying to show you that your liberation would come not through holding on, but through releasing your grip. In Ecclesiastes 3-6, Scripture reminds us that there is a time to keep and a time to throw away. There are seasons when the universe calls us not to fight harder for what we want, but to open our hands and allow what needs to leave to depart. Many misinterpret surrender as defeat. But in the economy of the spirit, surrender is often the doorway to the greatest victories. What you thought you couldn't live without may have been the very thing preventing you from truly living. What you begged God to save may have been what God needed to remove so you could be saved from it. Think about what you've clutched most tightly, what you've most desperately asked God to fix or restore. Could it be that true healing wasn't about getting it back, but about learning to live fully without it? Could the miracle be not restoration, but release? The universe sometimes seems cruel when it doesn't restore what we've lost. But like a parent who knows when a child's toy is broken beyond repair and must be replaced with something better, God sometimes allows losses so that we can receive gifts we couldn't hold while our hands were full of what needed to go. What you lost may have been exactly what allowed you to breathe again, to discover parts of yourself that had been overshadowed, to find new purpose that would have remained undiscovered otherwise. 8. Faith is not measured by what you got, but by what you kept believing. We come in agreement today about a truth that transforms how we understand faith itself. True faith isn't proven by how many prayers were answered exactly as you asked. It's revealed by what you continue to believe when the answers didn't come as expected. Pope Francis reminds us that faith is not receiving, it's continuing to trust when nothing has arrived. This is the faith that changes the universe. Not the faith that demands signs, but the faith that continues signing God's praises even when the night seems endless. Hebrews 11:1 tells us, faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Notice that faith is defined not by what we've received, but by what we continue to expect despite external evidence to the contrary. Many abandon their faith when prayers aren't answered according to their timetable or specifications. But my friends, that's not faith, that's a transaction. True faith says, even if the healing doesn't come, you are still the healer. Even if the provision is delayed, you are still the provider. Even if the miracle doesn't manifest, you are still the miracle worker. The universe hasn't forgotten you. You haven't been overlooked. You've been entrusted with a precious and rare opportunity to demonstrate what genuine faith looks like. Faith that doesn't depend on favorable circumstances, but creates its own light, even in darkness. What if your unanswered prayers aren't evidence of God's inattention, but opportunities to develop the kind of faith that moves mountains? What if every no or not yet has been cultivating in you a spiritual strength that fair-weather faith could never produce? You weren't abandoned, you were being proven, and through it all, you've remained standing, perhaps with tears, perhaps with questions, but still standing. That is the victory. That is the miracle. That is the faith that changes not just earth, but heaven. 9. God didn't say no. He said, not that way. I'm so happy to have you here with me. If this message is touching your heart and you're still here with me, type 2 in the comments. That way, I'll know you're walking this path of faith, seeking growth, reflection, and wisdom, as Pope Francis taught us. My dear friends, when your prayers seem to hit a wall of divine refusal, you may have heard no. But what if that wasn't God's answer at all? What if what you heard as rejection was actually redirection? Pope Francis teaches us to see beyond the apparent and trust in the invisible. When God seems to close a door you desperately wanted to walk through, He's not ending your journey. He's changing your route to a better destination. The universe isn't limited to the solutions you can imagine. Your creativity has boundaries. God's does not. Your vision has blind spots. Divine wisdom does not. What you interpreted as divine refusal may actually have been divine protection or divine redirection. In Isaiah 55, 8-9, God reminds us, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." This isn't meant to frustrate us, but to comfort us, to remind us that when our limited plans fail, God's limitless wisdom prevails. Many become bitter when their specific requests aren't granted, missing entirely the alternative pathways God is opening. They fixate on the closed door, missing the open window. They mourn the denied request, overlooking the better offer being extended. What if God's apparent no to your prayer wasn't rejection, but redirection to something that would fulfill not just your immediate desire, but your ultimate destiny? What if divine love isn't being withholding, but wonderfully creative? In finding better solutions than you could ask for, the universe has more ways to bless you than you have ways to ask for blessing. God's "not that way" isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of a better chapter than you could have written yourself. 10. Maybe he didn't fix it because he's still not finished. My friends, what if the greatest misunderstanding about your unanswered prayers is one of timing? What if what looks like divine inaction is actually divine patience? The patience of a creator who sees your story not in isolated moments but in its magnificent entirety. Pope Francis speaks of living hope even in the midst of chaos. This hope isn't blind optimism. It's the profound recognition that God's final word on your situation hasn't yet been spoken. What you've labeled an ending may be, in the divine narrative, merely the setup for an astonishing new beginning. The universe operates on a timeline that transcends our mortal understanding. What seems like delay to you may be perfect timing in the economy of eternity. What appears as divine neglect may be divine cultivation, the patient work of a gardener who knows exactly when the harvest should come. Romans 8:28 promises us, "We know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." Notice it doesn't say some things or the things we understand. It says all things. Even the chapters of your story that seem unfinished or broken are being worked into a greater narrative of purpose and redemption. Many give up just before the breakthrough. They close the book before the final chapter. They declare God absent or indifferent when he is actually setting the stage for a resolution more beautiful than they could have orchestrated themselves. What if that relationship isn't meant to be restored yet, because both parties still have growth to do before reunion? What if that healing hasn't manifested because the timing of its arrival will maximize its impact, not just in your life, but in countless others? What if that breakthrough is delayed because its perfection depends on elements still being arranged in the unseen realms? The universe hasn't abandoned your story in the middle of conflict. The divine author is still writing, and the best chapters may be yet to come. My dear friends, have you ever felt that God abandoned you when you needed him most? Have you wondered why your sincere prayers went seemingly unanswered? Share your experience in the comments below. Let me remind you of what we've discovered together today. God's silence isn't abandonment, it's the deep work of transformation. Your unanswered prayers weren't rejected. They were redirected toward better solutions than you could imagine. The pain that wasn't removed became the classroom where your greatest wisdom was learned. And what you thought was God's inaction was actually divine patience, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal the next chapter of your story. These aren't just nice thoughts. They are the profound truths that have sustained countless souls through history's darkest valleys. They are the wisdom that Pope Francis continues to share with a world hungry for meaning in suffering and purpose in pain. By embracing these truths, you aren't just temporarily comforted, you are fundamentally transformed. You begin to see with new eyes, to recognize the invisible miracles happening all around and within you. You develop the capacity to trust, not just when heaven's answer is immediate, But when divine wisdom operates on a timeline you cannot yet comprehend, the universe has not forgotten you. You are not overlooked. You are not abandoned. You are being sculpted, refined, prepared, and positioned for purposes that transcend your current understanding. Your unanswered prayers aren't evidence of divine indifference. They're invitations to divine intimacy, deeper than you've ever known. I encourage you to share this message with someone who feels forgotten by God, someone whose prayers seem to have hit divine silence, someone who needs to know that unanswered prayers aren't evidence of absence, but invitations to presence. Let this wisdom travel beyond this moment, touching hearts that desperately need this perspective. May God bless you. Type Amen in the comments so I know you stayed with me until the end. Subscribe now and turn on the notification bell. That way you'll never miss a new heart-touching message. I'll see you in the next video.